Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to take you on a journey through one of the most celebrated restoration comedies of manners. Today, we'll be exploring Love for Love by William Congreve. On this first slide, you'll see some key details. It was first performed at Lincoln's Inn Fields Theatre in London back in 1695. Throughout this presentation, we'll cover an act-by-act summary, analyze the themes and imagery, and delve into what makes this play a classic of its time. So, let's get started and enjoy this fascinating look into Restoration theater. A comedy, as Congreve suggests, should really be a mirror of familiar life, showing characters and situations that we all recognize. This idea emphasizes that comedy is rooted in everyday experiences, making it relatable and engaging for the audience. The play is structured in 5 acts, a common format at the time, and takes place within a single day, which helps keep the story lively and focused. The dialogue is in prose, and Congreve's sharp wit shines through, adding humor and intelligence to the exchanges. This play falls into the category of restoration comedy of manners, which often satirizes social customs and behaviors. It combines satire with sharp wit, offering both entertainment and social critique, challenging the norms of the time while making us laugh. The genre, therefore, is a blend of witty comedy and social commentary, making it both amusing and thought-provoking. The play had its first performance on April 30, 1695, at Lincoln's Inn Fields in London. It was an instant hit, both with audiences and critics, which speaks to its relevance and appeal at the time. William Congreve, the author, lived from 1670 to 1729 and was recognized as a master of restoration comedy. Besides this play, he also wrote The Way of the World in 1700, which is another brilliant example of his skill. In summary, this play exemplifies Congreve's mastery in creating lively, witty, socially insightful comedy that continues to be appreciated for its cleverness and relevance even centuries later. On this slide, we see Forsyte's sister-in-law, a character driven by greed who pursues Ben solely for his inheritance. However, her plans are derailed when she is tricked into marrying Tattle instead, highlighting themes of deception and social satire. Moving on, we have Mrs. Frail, Angelica's uncle, a credulous astrologer who believes in omens. His foolish learning is frequently satirized, mocking the absurdity of superstitions and misguided authority. Next is Forsyte himself, a vain and boastful gossip who claims false conquests. His character embodies hollow social performance, and notably he is tricked into marrying Mrs. Frail, which adds a layer of irony. Tattle, the young country girl, serves as the comic villain. She's naive but frank about her desires, parodying polite repression and societal expectations. Then there's Miss Prue, the comic foil, who provides sharp social commentary. She's more cynical than Valentine and exposes society's hypocrisies with wit. Valentine's friend, Scandal, is a sailor brother, blunt, earthy, and hilariously unsuited for polite society, serving as a satire of the rustic, seafaring bumpkin. Ben Legend, the comic character, is a tyrannical father, miserly and threatening Valentine with disinheritance unless he signs away his inheritance. He's a comic villain of authority, representing oppressive social structures. Meanwhile, Sir Sampson Legend, the wealthy heiress, is brilliant and elusive. He tests Valentine's sincerity throughout, making him the smartest character on stage and highlighting the theme of true worth versus superficial wealth. Angelica, the witty, spendthrift younger son, disinherited by his father, loves Angelica but must prove his worth through sincerity. Lastly, Valentine Legend, the protagonist, embodies sincerity and virtue, navigating these complex social dynamics. All these characters together paint a vivid picture of the themes of deception, social performance, and sincerity that run throughout the play. Now let's look at the resolution and unmasking in the final act. Valentine offers to sign the deed, clearly trying to resolve the conflict. Angelica, however, reveals her love for Valentine and, in a dramatic gesture, tears up the deed, symbolizing her trust and affection. Meanwhile, Tattle is tricked into marrying Mrs. Frail, adding to the comic chaos. Ultimately, love triumphs over deception and schemes, bringing everything to a close. This act ties together the themes of honesty, love, and the triumph of good over trickery. Moving back a bit, in Act V, we see Valentine pretending to be mad. His madness is both oracular and satirical. Angelica observes him coolly, recognizing the act but allowing it to unfold. Sir Sampson, intrigued by the chaos, considers marrying Angelica himself, adding another layer of complexity. Before that, in Act IV, Valentine's feigned madness is the centerpiece. Angelica tests his supposed insanity, and Tattle is busy courting Miss Prue. Meanwhile, Mrs. Frail is plotting with Sir Sampson. All these machinations create a peak in social chaos, highlighting how deception and wit drive the plot forward. In Act III, the action intensifies as Sir Sampson arrives, and Ben returns from sea, bringing fresh developments. Miss Prue encounters Tattle, setting up the clash between country innocence and urban seduction. As schemes multiply, the play's humor and tension increase, illustrating how deceptions begin to unravel. And in Act II, the stakes are high for Valentine, who faces ruin but refuses to sign away his inheritance. The scandal about his refusal spreads, and new characters like Tattle, Forsyte, and Mrs. Frail are introduced, setting up the dramatic crisis and the intricate setup that propels the story. Finally, in Act I, we see the 5-act structure laid out as the foundational narrative overview. This opening sets the stage, introduces the initial conflicts, and primes the audience for the twists and turns to come, establishing the overall theme of deception, love, and social satire. In this slide, we're exploring the central theme of the bond, which is essentially debt as a social trap. This idea runs deep throughout the play, highlighting how financial obligations can entangle individuals in complex and often unwelcome situations. We see that the key symbols here, love versus money and pride versus survival, represent the core conflicts faced by the characters. Love and money are often at odds, forcing characters to choose between personal affection and financial security. Similarly, pride and survival clash, especially when characters must decide whether to compromise their dignity or face ruin. The central conflict is presented through a comic and satirical lens, emphasizing fast-paced wit that keeps the audience engaged. The tone is reminiscent of Valentine's lodgings in London, circa 1695, giving us a vivid historical setting that adds to the play's charm. Looking at the act at a glance, we see Valentine initially refusing to compromise, choosing pride and Angelica over money, setting up the dramatic tension. Before this, his father, Sir Sampson, sends a lawyer demanding that Valentine sign away his rights to the estate or face disinheritance. This is a pivotal moment that underscores the stakes involved. Immediately, we are introduced to Mrs. Forsyte and Mrs. Frail, whose scheming natures are clear from their sharp dialogue. We also meet Tattle, the vain gossip, whose boastful and contradictory stories add humor and satire. Valentine's servant Jeremy provides earthy humor and pragmatic contrast to Valentine's romantic idealism. Lastly, we meet Scandal, our witty friend, who surveys the scene with sharp cynicism about society. All these elements set the stage for the act's main themes: crisis, debt, and the beginning of the game, where financial and social pressures collide, driving the plot forward. Let's start with Mrs. Frail and Mrs. Forsyte from the first scene. Notice how they scheme for their own interests, which shows that Congreve's women are quite active characters, not just passive figures. Their dialogue is sharp and clever, almost as if they're challenging the typical notion of women being passive. This was a deliberate move by Congreve to subvert those gender expectations. Now, moving on to the introduction of female agency. Tattle's first appearance is really key here because it highlights the play's satirical edge. He embodies the vain social performer who confuses reputation with reality. His boasts about women he claims to have secretly kept hidden parody the gossip culture of Restoration society. It's all about appearances and rumors. Next, let's look at the familiar plot of entail and disinheritance, which was common in Restoration dramas. Think of the prodigal son and the strict father. But Congreve adds complexity here. Valentine's reckless behavior isn't just vice for its own sake, but actually motivated by love. That makes us sympathize with him even as we laugh at his follies. And finally, Congreve's way of delivering information is quite clever. Instead of cluttering the scene with backstory, all the details, Valentine's debts, his love for Angelica, his father's tyranny, are revealed through witty exchanges between characters. This use of sparkling dialogue makes wit both a stylistic choice and a storytelling device, keeping the play lively and engaging. On slide 7, we see Angelica make her appearance. She's brilliant, elusive, and really captures the audience's attention. Her exchanges with Sir Sampson reveal her quick wit and her ability to navigate his absurdity with charm. This moment highlights the contrast between her sharpness and his bluster, emphasizing the theme of cleverness versus foolishness. Moving on, we also observe how the play expands its satirical world, introducing new characters like Miss Prue and Tattle, who bring a humorous, farcical tone to the story. The overall setting remains at Forsyte's house and Valentine's rooms, grounding the action in a familiar domestic space. Remember, this act is all about arrivals and schemes. Characters like Sir Sampson plan to marry Ben to Miss Prue to consolidate their fortunes, while Mrs. Frail is already scheming to secure Ben for herself, eyeing his inheritance. Ben himself, returning from sea, is blunt and refreshingly honest, an outsider among the London society characters. His straightforwardness sharply contrasts with the artificiality and artifice of London life, which is a recurring theme. This act showcases how innocence from the country clashes with the manipulative urban world, setting the stage for the comedy and satire to unfold further. Now let's delve into the arrangement marriage plot. Here, Congreve satirizes restoration marriage as a form of commerce, highlighting how both parties are often unwilling and both parents are mercenary. This reflects a societal norm that, while accepted, is fundamentally absurd. Congreve uses this to critique the idea of arranged marriages, showing how they reduce love to a transaction. Interestingly, the subplot mirrors this theme through Valentine's own forced choice, reinforcing the idea that personal desires are often sacrificed for social or familial expectations. Moving on to Sir Sampson's authority, his paternal, financial, and social power is consistently portrayed as ridiculous. Congreve cleverly uses him to satirize patriarchal power, illustrating how the man with all the legal control is often the least wise. This turns the usual authority figure into a comic villain, serving as a social critique of the absurdity of unchecked patriarchal dominance. Next, Miss Prue's candidness about her desires offers a sharp parody of the overly formal and decorous expectations placed on women. Her willingness to submit to Tattle's tutoring is darkly comic, exposing how innocence is corrupted by urban sophistication. Through her, Congreve highlights the hypocrisy within the marriage market, how genuine feelings are often overshadowed by social performance. Finally, Ben's character introduces a different kind of comedy. His nautical language and straightforwardness make him stand out as a fish out of water. But what's important is that Congreve gives him moral weight. His refusal to pretend, saying, "I'll not speak what I don't think," contrasts sharply with the polished, often insincere characters around him. This sets up a compelling theme of nature versus artifice, emphasizing authenticity over social pretension. All right, let's delve into slide 9. Here, we see madness being used as a lens, an intriguing concept, where characters pretend blindness to see more clearly. It's like they're disguising the truth to reveal it better. The key symbol here is that all schemes are now running in parallel, creating a complex web of deception and strategy. We're building toward a climax that's wildly comic, yet there's an undertone of menace that keeps things tense. The tone of this scene is feigned madness, which acts as a disguise for truth, kind of like a mask that hides true intentions but also reveals deeper realities. This dramatic device, especially in Act III, heightens the tension. At a glance, we see Sir Sampson furious with Valentine's supposed madness, so furious that he threatens to cut him off completely and even remake his will, which shows how seriously he takes control and reputation. Meanwhile, Mrs. Frail and Mrs. Forsyte get caught gossiping by each other. Mutual blackmail keeps them in alliance, adding yet another layer of scheming. Forsyte is consulting horoscopes and astrological charts, pseudoscience that's systematically mocked, emphasizing the absurdity of false pretenses. Tattle, on the other hand, makes increasingly absurd advances to Miss Prue, who now mimics the coquetry he's taught her, showing how manipulation and role-playing intensify. Angelica arrives, observing Valentine's madness with apparent detachment, though, as we'll see, she might not be as unmoved as she seems. Valentine, in his mad mode, delivers sharp, paradoxical speeches that are both scathing and truthful, highlighting how madness can sometimes unearth honesty. And finally, Valentine, advised by scandal, feigns madness to delay signing a deed and to test who around him can be trusted. So overall, this slide encapsulates how feigned madness escalates the schemes, blending comedy with menace, all while characters hide their true motives behind masks of insanity. It's a clever commentary on appearances versus reality, how sometimes pretending to be blind helps you see the truth more clearly. Now, let's look at this fascinating moment when Mrs. Frail and Mrs. Forsyte catch each other in hypocrisy. They form what I'd call a defensive pact, saying, "You know my weakness, I know yours." This mutual blackmail is both funny and a bit unsettling, revealing how women often had to navigate a society that punished their desires. It's a sharp portrait of survival under social constraints. Moving on, Forsyte's astrology is a great example of satire on false knowledge and superstition. He's confident, credulous, and consistently wrong, which Congreve uses to mock the kind of pretentious intellect that mistakes nonsense for true learning, something very much rooted in the Restoration era's skepticism of quackery. Next, in Act III, we see Valentine transform into a Lear-like fool. He starts speaking truths that no one else dares to voice, about money, sex, and hypocrisy. Congreve cleverly uses this wise fool archetype to show that only those who seem to have lost their wits can speak honestly. It's a powerful satirical device. Valentine's supposed madness echoes theatrical traditions from Shakespeare's Hamlet to the bedlam scenes of Jacobean drama. But Congreve puts his own spin on it. Valentine's mad speeches become the sharpest social critique in the play. His feigned lunacy creates a safe space for honesty in a hypocritical society. So, in essence, feigned madness isn't just a dramatic device here. It's a crucial tool for revealing uncomfortable truths and challenging societal pretenses. On this slide, we're focusing on the concept of the mask or veil as a symbol of deception, which is a recurring theme throughout the play. It represents how characters often hide their true intentions or feelings behind a facade, and in this context, deception becomes almost like currency, something that facilitates plots and manipulations. A key symbol here is the veiled wedding, which is a classic trap. Tattle believes he's marrying Angelica or Miss Prue, but in reality, he's walking into Mrs. Frail's trap. This adds a layer of comic irony, highlighting how appearances can be deceiving. The central scheme questions whether Valentine's love is genuine or merely performative. It's a darkly comic tension that keeps rising. Are these characters truly in love, or are they just playing roles? This question challenges us to think about the nature of authenticity in relationships, especially under the influence of deception. The tone of this act is quite satirical and sharp, as the play explores these themes with a darkly comic edge. Looking at Act IV at a glance, we see scandal erupting openly. Mrs. Forsyte is being pursued sexually, which adds another subplot of comic and satirical commentary. The veiled wedding trap is set early in this act, with Tattle being duped into walking into Mrs. Frail's scheme, thinking he's marrying someone else. Mrs. Frail's persuasion leads Tattle to believe he must secretly marry a veiled lady, who is actually Mrs. Frail herself, to help Valentine's ruse. Meanwhile, Sir Sampson, furious at Valentine's manipulations, astonishingly proposes marriage to Angelica, who plays it cool, adding to the comic tension. Angelica then interviews Valentine, dressed and composed, trying to probe whether his words are sincere or just a performance. Valentine, in turn, prophesies to Forsyte about Mrs. Forsyte's infidelity, exposing her, but also highlighting the comic irony that Forsyte's astrology failed to detect this. Finally, Valentine continues his madness act, delivering prophetic speeches that reveal home truths to each visiting character, emphasizing the play's exploration of deception and truth. All these points tie together to show how characters test and deceive each other, blurring the lines between genuine love and performance, which is central to the overall theme of the play. Let's explore some of the key moments from Act IV. First, the masked marriage trick played on Tattle draws heavily from commedia dell'arte and Jacobean intrigue traditions, but Congreve gives it a darker twist. Tattle's downfall comes from his own vanity and desire. He assumes himself irresistible, which makes pride his undoing. It's a powerful reminder that pride can be its own punishment. Next, we see what I like to call the veiled wedding trap. Valentine's oracular speeches in Act IV are some of Congreve's most daring satire. He speaks directly to each character, revealing blunt truths that polite society usually suppresses. This device literally embodying the play's core idea, that madness or sincerity is the only real cure for hypocrisy, makes the message sharp and memorable. Moving on, Sir Sampson's proposal to Angelica is a brilliant piece of comic villainy. It's quite astonishing. Here's the tyrant father who's tried to ruin his son, now competing with him for the same woman. Congreve uses this to expose Sir Sampson as a fool driven by appetite, undermining his authority and showing how absurd his pretensions are. And then there's Angelica's coolness in Act IV. Some might see her as heartless, but I think she's conducting a moral experiment. She's testing whether Valentine can love without calculation. Her apparent indifference is really a crucible, a test to see if genuine love can emerge from sincerity rather than strategy. In that sense, she's the true intelligence of the play. Overall, these moments highlight how Congreve intertwines satire, character, and theme, showing us that honesty and sincerity are powerful tools against hypocrisy, and that vanity and pride often lead to downfall. On this slide, we see how the torn bond between love and money plays out in the climax of the play. The key symbol here is the Tattle and Mrs. Frail, who are trapped together in their comic misadventures. Angelica's act of tearing up the bond represents the triumph of sincerity over material greed. This act proves that true love is based on genuine self-sacrifice, which ultimately leads to the resolution. Valentine signs the bond, showing his sincere commitment, and this act symbolizes the real, authentic connection he shares with Angelica. The climax unfolds in Act V, where we see everything come to a head. Sir Sampson is utterly humiliated, outwitted by both his son and Angelica. The play concludes with Valentine's triumph. Ben, refusing to continue the farce of an arranged marriage, happily returns to the sea. Meanwhile, Tattle and Mrs. Frail discover they've tricked each other into marriage. Both are shocked, but also comically victimized by their own schemes. Angelica's declaration of love, that she only sought his sincerity, underscores the theme that love founded on honesty and sacrifice triumphs over greed and deception. Angelica tearing up the bond was necessary to show that she valued Valentine's sincerity more than wealth. Valentine's act of self-sacrifice, signing away the deed to save his honor, was the test Angelica had been waiting for, demonstrating true virtue. When Valentine drops his pretenses and speaks honestly, he drops the madness driven by false hopes of wealth from a rich uncle. His honest declaration clears the way for genuine love. Ultimately, Valentine's decision to sign the bond, surrendering his fortune, is a profound act of love and sacrifice. This act underscores the play's message, that authentic love is rooted in sincerity and selflessness, triumphing over greed and deception in the end. Unlike Shakespeare's festive comedies, Congreve's ending is not wholly celebratory. Tattle's and Mrs. Frail's marriage is a trap. It's a deception driven by their own vices. Ben, on the other hand, exits alone, suggesting he's not caught in the same web. Sir Sampson appears humiliated but remains unchanged, highlighting that the world Congreve depicts isn't reformed. Only the wittiest characters manage to navigate it successfully. Moving to the ending's ambiguity, we see that Tattle and Mrs. Frail's mutual entrapment is a classic mechanism in restoration comedy. The deceiver deceived. Both characters are punished by their own flaws, vanity in Tattle and mercenary greed in Mrs. Frail. This isn't just comic resolution, It's a moral judgment, underscoring how vice leads to downfall. Now, the moral climax centers around Valentine's willingness to sign a bond, risking his inheritance for love. This act is a deliberate test orchestrated by Angelica. Valentine passes the test, demonstrating that genuine love involves sacrificing self-interest, contrasting sharply with the mercenary values that dominate the surrounding world. And here's the interesting part. By Act V, we learn that Angelica has been the driving force behind the entire resolution. Her supposed passivity was actually a strategic choice. She's the real architect of the outcome. Congreve suggests something quite radical, that Angelica, the heroine, is both more intelligent and morally serious than Valentine, the supposed hero. This shift challenges traditional notions of heroism and moral virtue, emphasizing that wit and moral insight can be more powerful than brute action. Let's take a closer look at the characters in this slide. First, we see that some characters in Love for Love have power but lack wit. Every encounter with Angelica reveals this gap. Her authority isn't backed by intelligence. This is a key point because, in Congreve's world, authority without wit becomes a kind of comic villain archetype. Think of Sir Sampson. He's blunt and pompous, convinced he's witty and charming, but in reality, he's just a boastful fool. His failure isn't just comic. It also serves as a moral lesson about the emptiness of social performance. Then there's Tattle, who stands outside the main action, commenting and advising. He's like the play's satirical voice, providing a running commentary that highlights the absurdities of the scenes. He's cynical and sharp, but his wit is used to critique rather than to genuinely solve problems. Moving on, we have Scandal. His wit is real, but his judgment is poor until Act V. Interestingly, his cleverest move is the madness device, which he learns from Scandal himself, showing how even reckless characters can have moments of brilliance. Next is Valentine, who uses wit strategically. He tests emotions, exposes falsehoods, and orchestrates the resolution. Essentially, in Congreve's view, wit is synonymous with wisdom. And finally, we arrive at Angelica. She embodies the theme of wit as a moral virtue. Her intelligence isn't just for entertainment, it's the moral currency that sustains her and others in the play. So, connecting this all back to the overall theme, in Love for Love, intelligence isn't just a trait, it's the key to moral integrity and social survival. Characters' use or lack of wit reveals their true moral standing and their ability to navigate a corrupt social world. On this slide, we see how each character in Love for Love uses mimicry and performance to navigate social expectations. Prue tries to imitate the coquettish behavior Tattle teaches her, but her lack of an authentic social mask makes her performance both comic and poignant. Her honest desire keeps breaking through, highlighting her vulnerability. Then there's Angelica, who adopts a strategic coldness to test Valentine. Her indifference isn't accidental. It's a deliberate mask designed to reveal Valentine's true character. This shows how performance can serve as a moral instrument, shaping how we reveal or conceal ourselves. Tattle, on the other hand, pretends to be sophisticated and sexually confident. But his boasts are empty, and he's actually tricked into marriage because others believe his false reputation. His performance, though convincing, leads to his undoing. And Valentine's feigned madness is arguably the most elaborate performance. By pretending to be mad, he says things he couldn't say as himself. Here, deception becomes a way to access sincerity, an ironic twist that the play highlights. Overall, this slide raises a key question. In a society that demands constant performance, is authentic identity even possible? Everyone wears a mask, and the play asks us to reflect on whether genuine selfhood can truly exist beneath these social facades. Angelica controls her own fortune, and this is a truly radical idea for the time. She cannot be forced into a marriage, which means her wealth gives her real freedom. This allows her to choose Valentine based on love, not necessity or financial pressure. Her independence stands in stark contrast to other characters bound by societal expectations. Moving on, Sir Sampson represents the typical patriarchal authority. His power comes from the law and tradition. But in the play, he's shown to be outwitted again and again, highlighting how power without merit can be quite foolish. Congreve uses Sir Sampson's character to satirize the idea that authority alone is impressive. Instead, it often makes him look like a fool. Then we see Mrs. Frail, who is entirely driven by greed. Her obsession with inheriting Ben is purely mercenary. Money is her main goal. When she ends up marrying Tattle, who's also broke, it's like a comedic form of justice. Congreve is making a point here. Chasing after wealth without intelligence or virtue is ultimately self-defeating. Next, there's a scene where both fathers treat their children as commodities, like goods to be exchanged. This is a sharp satire of the marriage market, showing how disastrous it becomes when the merchandise, the children, have minds of their own, resisting being just pawns in these schemes. The central prop of the play is the legal document Valentine must sign, a deed that symbolizes the control fathers have over their sons, money over love, law over desire. The destruction of this document by Angelica marks the emotional climax of the story, emphasizing her fight for personal choice and love over societal or financial constraints. Finally, the play opens amid an economic crisis, with Valentine's love having bankrupted him. Congreve doesn't romanticize this situation. Instead, he shows that desire without money can have serious, real-world consequences, especially in Restoration London, where wealth and social standing are everything. Overall, Congreve uses marriage and financial schemes to critique the corruption inherent in these institutions. Money, marriage, and power are intertwined, and the play reveals how these forces often undermine genuine love and virtue. Let's start by looking at some of the key characters and their roles. Angelica acts as a cool observer, quietly watching everything unfold around her. The scandal serves as an ironic chorus, highlighting the absurdity and hypocrisy of the social world. The subplot mirrors the main plot, emphasizing that themes of deception and appearance are woven throughout the play. Madness, in a sense, reveals deeper truths that might otherwise be hidden. Wit becomes a powerful unmasking device, exposing falsehoods through clever dialogue and humor. And the comic reversal of expectation keeps the audience on their toes, showing how appearances can be deceiving. Now, moving on to Congreve's method. Here we see how characters are portrayed differently depending on whether we see them through their true nature or their social masks. Valentine appears as a sincere, loving man, but in truth, he's a dissolute rake. Miss Prue seems honest and frank about her desires, but is actually an obedient daughter. Mrs. Frail looks like a respectable widow, yet she's a scheming opportunist. Forsyte seems like a learned scholar, but is actually a credulous dupe. Sir Sampson is perceived as a powerful patriarch, but he's often a comic fool. And Tattle, who seems vain and hollow, is actually a man of fashion. This contrast highlights how much the social world of the play depends on appearances. Everyone wears masks, sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly, and Congreve maps out who is hiding what and why. This brings us to the central theme of this slide, the ongoing tension between appearance and reality, which is especially relevant in the Restoration world. It's a world obsessed with surface, where social roles are often performative, and true character is hidden beneath layers of disguise. This theme invites us to question what's genuine and what's merely a facade, reminding us that in society, appearances can be very deceiving. On this slide, we see how Congreve's female characters challenge the typical notions of femininity by being frank and outspoken. Her character, for example, mocks the enforced modesty that society expects from women. She says what polite women must not, turning societal expectations on their head. Whether her actions come across as comic or sympathetic really depends on how the production stages her innocence versus her potential exploitation, highlighting the complexity of her character. Moving on, Miss Prue refuses Ben and instead pursues Tattle openly. Her relationship with Mrs. Frail is built on a darkly brilliant blackmail pact, essentially a survival strategy in a world that punishes female desire. Congreve acknowledges a double standard here, one that he can't fully overturn, but he depicts these women as navigating and even subverting those societal constraints. Mrs. Forsyte conducts her affairs quietly but effectively, using blackmail as a tool. Her pursuit of Ben is driven by genuine vulnerability. Women without income were often dependent on men. Congreve satirizes her methods, but not her underlying situation. The comedy here has a dark undertow, reflecting real social issues through satire. Then there's Mrs. Frail, who is essentially the architect of the story's ending. Her wealth grants her independence, and her intelligence grants her power. Congreve positions her as the real protagonist of the play, even if she's not always front and center. Finally, Angelica shows that Congreve's women are not passive victims. They actively navigate and manipulate the men around them with intelligence and purpose. Overall, this slide underscores a key theme, that gender, desire, and female agency are complex and intertwined, and these characters challenge traditional gender roles in clever, nuanced ways. Ben's blunt naturalism is both comic and corrective. He refuses pretense, saying, "I'll not say a civil thing if I don't think it," which highlights his honesty. His awkwardness exposes the artificiality of everyone around him, making him the play's unwitting moral touchstone. Moving on to Sir Sampson, he has legal power through bonds and disinheritance, but he lacks wisdom. He's constantly outwitted by others, his son, Angelica, even the servants. Congreve uses Sir Sampson to satirize patriarchal authority, depicting it as buffoonish, which is quite a radical critique for the time. Then there's Tattle, who parodies the obsession with reputation in Restoration society. He's all about performance with no real substance. His punishment, marrying Mrs. Frail, serves as comic justice, symbolizing a man enslaved by the social facade he upholds. Lastly, Forsyte satirizes false learning. He believes he masters the cosmos, yet he can't understand basic truths about his own household, like his wife's infidelity or his daughter's desires. This confident incompetence is a sharp commentary on the pretensions of the Restoration's intellectual class. Overall, Congreve systematically contrasts wisdom and folly, using each subplot to reflect how society really functions, tying into our theme of reason, folly, and satire in the Restoration era. On this slide, we see how Forsyte's star charts and planetary omens are actually quite ironic throughout the play. He predicts everything wrong, turning the heavens into a sort of comic false oracle. It's as if he's holding the universe's secrets, but they're really just illusions, highlighting how unreliable or even humorous the idea of divine or cosmic guidance can be. This contrasts sharply with Angelica and Scandal, who possess a genuine form of foresight, the ability to perceive things clearly and honestly. Their insight isn't based on astrology but on true understanding. Moving on to the astrological imagery associated with foresight, Ben introduces a lot of maritime metaphors, tacking, steering, weather, into the drawing room. These terms evoke the open sea, danger, and adventure, which is quite different from the land-bound, polite society he's part of. His language signals a different, freer world, one where honesty and movement dominate over static social roles. It suggests that real insight or truth might lie beyond the confines of societal expectations, somewhere in the unpredictable, honest chaos of the sea. This idea is reinforced by the specific sea imagery Ben uses. Think of it as a metaphor for navigating life's uncertainties. His language of navigation and weather reflects a desire for authentic direction, contrasting with the rigid social structures around him. Next, we come to the trick played on Tattle in Act IV, the marriage to a veiled woman. This literalizes the play's central metaphor, the social mask. The veil isn't just a piece of cloth, it symbolizes the extreme of social disguise, how appearances are often substituted for reality. And as the play unfolds, we see that this illusion can have permanent consequences. What's hidden behind the mask can't be easily uncovered or undone. Finally, Love for Love is highly meta-theatrical, meaning it constantly blurs the lines between acting and real life. The characters are aware they're performing for each other, adjusting their behavior based on who's watching. Congreve uses this to frame social life itself as a kind of theater, where everyone plays a role, and, interestingly, theater as a reflection of social truth. It's a reminder that in society, what we show on the surface often masks what's truly going on underneath. So overall, this slide emphasizes how imagery, whether celestial, nautical, or theatrical, serves to explore themes of truth, deception, and perception. It's a reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and real insight often requires looking beyond the surface. When Valentine pretends to be mad, his body becomes a kind of performance space. His so-called oracular behavior, those unusual gestures and prophetic tone, are actually a form of physical theater. They comment on social truths, revealing what language often cannot express. The body, in this case, speaks what words repress. Moving on to Valentine's madness. As a form of physical language, we see that his body communicates beyond spoken words, highlighting deeper social meanings. Now, let's talk about Miss Prue and Ben. They are literally exchanged between parents as if they were commodities. Mrs. Frail treats Ben's inheritance as a prize to be won, emphasizing the language of purchase, exchange, and transaction. This reflects how the marriage plot in the play is intertwined with these market-like dealings, which serve as a pointed critique of the marriage market itself. Next, we see the body as a commodity. The play opens with creditors pressing Valentine, and debt runs throughout the story. Debt here isn't just financial, it's social. People owe each other in relationships, obligations, and even love. Congreve uses financial language to deepen the moral dimensions of these interactions, showing how intertwined economic and social bonds are. One of the most powerful symbols in the play is the legal document Valentine must sign to give up his inheritance. This document is traded, threatened, and schemed over, but ultimately, Angelica tears it apart. Its destruction symbolizes love's triumph over property law, emphasizing that human relationships can transcend legal and material constraints. Finally, Congreve's language is packed with commercial and legal imagery: money, legal documents, the body, all reflecting a society where almost every relationship is transactional. These images help us understand the play's critique of a society driven by material interests, where love and social bonds are often reduced to economic exchanges. Let's explore some of Congreve's key literary devices that really underpin his satirical comedy. First, we see how Valentine's madness functions as a device, allowing characters to speak honestly in a world where direct honesty is often socially unacceptable. It's a clever way to reveal truths that might otherwise be suppressed. Next, there's the tradition of feigned madness, borrowed from Elizabethan drama like Shakespeare's Hamlet or Webster's Mad Scene, and repurposed here for satire. You can see this in exchanges between characters like Angelica and Sir Sampson, or Valentine and Scandal, where every line becomes a pointed thrust or witty parry. These rapid exchanges, full of epigrams, are a hallmark of Restoration comedy, emphasizing cleverness and quick thinking. We also see how Congreve constructs his plots with a moral and comic purpose through what we call the wit combat. The structure itself is designed so that each schemer ends up punished by their own schemes, like Tattle with vanity, Mrs. Frail with greed, and Sir Sampson with hubris. This creates a poetic justice that's both entertaining and morally instructive. Another key device is the providential plot. For example, when Tattle approaches the veiled bride, we, as the audience, understand the inevitable outcome, what awaits him. This layering of irony heightens both the comedy and the moral judgment as we see the characters unaware of their fate. Dramatic irony also plays a vital role. Take Scandal. He acts as a satirical observer, providing commentary that shapes the play's critique without influencing the plot directly. He's like a Greek chorus, standing outside the action and commenting on it, which adds depth to the satire. Then there's the Raisonneur, a character who articulates the satirical commentary. Throughout the play, characters like Tattle or Forsyte reveal their absurd social manners, boasting, astrology, or petty behaviors that are ultimately exposed as ridiculous. Congreve's comedy of manners uses wit and irony to critique polite society, rather than physical humor. By understanding these devices, madness, feigned madness, wit combat, providential plotting, dramatic irony, and the Raisonneur, we see how Congreve masterfully combines structural and character elements to craft sharp, moral satire. These tools are what make his work both entertaining and insightful, fitting perfectly into the larger theme of social critique through comedy. Let's look at the cynical opening position of Scandal, which the play then proceeds to demolish. At the start, Valentine's sincerity is dismissed, suggesting that wit without truth is merely hollow. This sets up a key tension in the play, questioning whether cleverness alone is enough. Now, a notable quote from Act II. "A wit should no more be sincere than a woman constant." This phrase reflects a common, self-aware misogynistic view at the time, that wit and constancy are incompatible. But the play ultimately subverts this idea through Angelica, who, fully misunderstood by everyone, wins precisely because she's underestimated. This challenges the notion that sincerity or constancy are impossible in witty women. Moving to Act V, Angelica declares, "Women are like tricks by sleight of hand, which, to admire, we should not understand." Here, the play reaches its moral climax. Angelica reveals her true test. Her interest was never in Valentine's wit or wealth, but in his sincerity. She becomes the true moralist of the story, showing that genuine honesty is what truly matters. In Act III, Valentine, disguised as Mad, says, "I never had any other design upon you but the discovery of your sincerity." This highlights Congreve's key paradox, that true wisdom often requires acknowledging our limitations. Valentine's madness allows him to speak more truthfully than his normal self, illustrating how folly can be a form of insight. Then there's the famous line, "I'll tell thee what I think. I think the wisest man is he that knows he's a fool." This explicitly states the play's core thesis, that in a society obsessed with performance, sustained deception can be indistinguishable from truth. Deception becomes the social norm, and authenticity is often hidden beneath a facade. Finally, the quote, "I know no effectual difference between continued affectation and reality." It underscores that, in this social world, affectation and genuine feeling blur together, making it difficult to distinguish sincerity from acting. This slide emphasizes that wit, truth, deception, and sincerity are all intertwined, challenging us to consider where truth truly lies in social interactions. The phrase, "the truest sincerity is the wisest wit," really captures the essence of Congreve's work. This line reminds us that genuine honesty and moral integrity are more valuable than cleverness alone. First performed in 1695, this play remains relevant today and stands as Congreve's greatest stage success. Its influence extends beyond the Restoration period, inspiring writers like Shaw, Wilde, and Sheridan, and it was restored and appreciated anew starting in the 1960s. When we think about its legacy, we see how it shaped the comedy of manners, blending sharp wit with social critique. Congreve's use of racineur characters and irony creates a layered humor that invites both laughter and reflection. The play also showcases wit as a form of combat, where cleverness is used to challenge societal norms and hypocrisies. In terms of craft, Congreve masterfully employs masks, theatricality, and themes of money and law, elements that reveal the complexities of human behavior. Imagery in the play explores deception, gender roles, and the tension between reason and folly, all woven into the fabric of the story. The central themes highlight that Congreve's work isn't just about entertainment, it's about moral insight. His comedy argues that true sincerity, being genuine, is the rarest and most precious currency in human interactions. So, in conclusion, Congreve's masterwork stands out not only for its wit, but for how it uses that wit to do moral work. It teaches us that authenticity and sincerity are more valuable than superficial cleverness. And that's why this play remains a cornerstone of literary and theatrical history, because at its heart, it champions honesty over performance.